1950, Las Vegas was booming. Tourists from all around the world flocked to experience the mesmerizing spectacle and all it had to offer. It was the definitive American tourist trap. 2,000 miles across the country on the border of South North Carolina, a local businessman named Alan Schafer was opening a beer stand that would grow to become America's largest Mexican-themed roadside attraction, south of the border.
The definition of kitsch is the appropriation of what is real for the creation of what is fake for mass consumption. So you're taking something that exists. So you're taking the idea of Mexico and you're recreating it in a way that appeals to all sorts of people, to the public, for resale. You're taking the idea of Mexico and you're turning it into a snow globe. You're taking the idea of sombreros and putting it on a 500-foot tower over the middle of South Carolina. You're looking at taking something that's important to people or that people recognize and reproducing it in a way that you can distribute it. And in doing that, it becomes humorous. Every product that you can think of, they've sold and stamped a sombrero on it at some point, or a donkey. I think at south of the border they take kitsch and they expand it into a lifestyle, really. My favorite quote is Donald Featherstone, who is the inventor of the plastic flamingo, who said, before plastics, only rich people could afford to have bad taste. This is my master's thesis. It's the fabulous plan by Pedro. The University of South Carolina decided to give me a master's degree for, which was very nice of them. South of the border, 1950 through 2001.
South of the border, when I came here, we called it a one-night stand. We were exactly halfway between New York City and Miami.
It makes a lot of sense that it sort of became this mecca for tourists on their way to somewhere else. It's halfway between New York and Miami. it's in the middle of nowhere. It's in a kind of daunting part of the country too, where you start going through what looks like, to northern traffic, the deep south. There is nothing. It's just fields as far as you can see.
Lots of people came here as kids with their parents, and they've come back with their children or grandchildren. So they know what to expect. Some people who've never been here, they say after seeing all those road signs, they just got to stop and see what it's all about.
Well, we have 5 restaurants on the complex, approximately 11 gift shops, a motel, 2 service stations, convenience stores, truck stop, antique shops. The biggest seller here, though, is fireworks. Especially in the holidays, fireworks is just huge, 24 hours a day. I mean, big bucks.
Got some fireworks for my son Joe, who's in Rochester, New York.
We're headed up to Washington, D.C. And I said, we got to stop at south of the border, because everybody stops at south of the border. Probably not on the way back.
That's usually what we come for, just to get some fireworks. Like I say, to check out the tourists.
We stopped here after coming back from Africa. We needed to find something American to stay at.
You know, this is more American than Ronald Reagan, man. This thing right here, man. I'm telling you. I figure, okay, south of the border, Mexican sleep, you know. Yeah. I got over here, I'm like, holy crap, man, this is, you know, can't find a Mexican in here.
It's so great. It's like tacky and like cheap, colorful, decaying.
I love it. Every time I come down this way, it's the first place we stop. Gotta go here.
Just always packed full of tourists. I know somebody's making some money here. I don't know who it is, but whoever come up with the place got it going on.
Well, there's a lot of legends going around. Somewhere around 1950, Mr. Schafer owned a beer depot over in Robeson County. And Robeson County became a dry county. So he came right over here, 50 yards, 75 yards across the line, and built a glorified hamburger stand.
Mr. Schafer says that one night this plush salesman came by and he didn't have enough gas to get where he was going, so he bought all the little stuffed animals and stuff that he had and put them on the shelf in the restaurant, and folks started buying them. And you know, south of the border has evolved from that 18 by 36 foot beer stand, which was mostly cooler space.
And then he built a small motel unit and just gradually increased this side of the complex. We had a log fort across the road over there with a zoo, and that was about it. And then whenever I-95 came through around 1967, the other side just blossomed up. You know, we had plenty of traffic then.
Well, the story goes that he, when he was adding motel rooms, that some of the building supplies were shipped to the Schafer project south, and in parentheses of the North Carolina border. You know, so you know, kind of thought, well, that sounded neat, south of the border.
You know, there was this song, South of the Border, Mexico Way. So he just picked up the theme and created a whole theme with it. He loved the play of the word S.O.B. because he was devilish.
You almost wonder if he created Pedro as this fictional south of the border owner to kind of hide behind, so he could be that sort of figure behind all the excitement without necessarily being seen.
At first, I didn't have that much dealings with Mr. Schafer. It was kind of a figure you just didn't approach. You know, I'd heard the name just about all my life, and but all that changed. He was very, like I said, very easy person to work for. and he was kind of a recluse. He didn't really go anywhere.
You know, as a sister, I would have gone to Europe a few times, gone to the Orient, and he went to California, to Bali, and all into New York. But he was always anxious to get back.
I mean, it's sort of his own little kingdom in many ways. He takes what should be a small business, a roadside restaurant and motel, and turns it into a very individualized creation. And you can see, in some ways, Alan Schafer was the advertising genius who never had the chance to go into big business.
He was a journalist, a major at the university, but he wrote well, and he knocked off all the signs over the years.
Yes, sir. And he had a big billboard upstairs in his office with every sign he had, dated, whatever. And he came up with the designs, the logos of whatever himself. And we have our own sign department in-house.
Well, that's Ace High Advertising is what's behind the billboards. And allegedly Schafer came up with every single one of the billboards that's on display. It is interesting that he started out apparently taking beer signs that were issued by the beer companies, painting them purple, turning them catty corner instead of being rectangular. They put on their sides so they're diamond shaped, and writing, systematic messages where you saw a sign farther along that said, only 8 more miles to south of the border. And he put the money into purchasing the land, either the small portion of land right by the interstate where the billboard is, or the rights to put a billboard there very early on, which is one of the things that makes it look kind of like he might have had something to do with where I-95 was going on, that he was able to leap right in there and purchase quite a lot of prime billboard space.
I always described him as a man who was able to seize the moment. If a hot idea popped in his head, he didn't sit around getting a bunch of people to help plan it or think about it. He said, let's build it.
When he opened the border, there was no color lines for anybody, either in the motel or the restaurant. And he employed immediately Black and American Indian that had not been done.
One of the big things that happened in Democratic politics in South Carolina in the 40s is that there was a big controversy over desegregating the Democratic primary.
But he was Mr. Democrat. He had all kinds of stuff in his office, from Robert Kennedy, John Kennedy, and all of them.
In 1948, the Klan was actually singling out Alan Schafer and the Schafer Distributing Company, the family beer business, because of his support for desegregating the primary. And they had a big boycott where they said, don't buy the beer that Schafer's selling. Alan Schafer started paying his entire payroll in $2 bills. You don't see a lot of $2 bills. So if you can imagine every till in Dillon being filled with nothing but $2 bills, you can kind of see how quickly his sort of strength as an economic powerhouse became apparent.
Some of that I know that he did tell me at one point, but I don't know whether it's that point in history where they were marching and threatening him, and he went out with a rifle and defied them, said, "You do not come here."
It was an advertising coup, really, because he got advertising for the beer business. He got advertising for his political views. And he also, as he later said, showed how supporting sort of a minority group in the community helped build his business. He later would say that the beer business was supported during the boycott because of loyalty from the Black accounts. 1958, Ace High would be around. The jukebox company started almost around the same time. And you gotta remember, by the time he starts South of the Border, he's not a young man with no money starting a struggling business. He's something of a beer baron. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that most of the ads would be somebody connected with him or beholden to him. And you know, in some ways, you see a lot of things like that with Schafer, where you don't know if it's an advertisement or if it's actually a claim. That's why when you read in Borderlines letters from people from Maine and New York saying, oh, I love your mini fridge, or we weren't sure we should stop, but we did and it was great, you have to weigh whether or not this is a real letter. I don't know. You never really know with Alan Schafer. You really never know. I mean, I never met him. So piecing things together from, I've seen interviews and I've talked to people who knew him and I've read letters he wrote to other people. I think he was a very intelligent man. I think he was probably one of the foremost advertising minds of the 20th century.
Very competitive man. We had right over here at the end of Rocket City, there's a guy who had a little store over there. And Mr. Schafer had wanted to buy that property for years and years and years. And then one of our ex-employees, who was, well, is no longer with us, he had been working on the same deal himself. So he purchased it, and you might say a little skirmish broke out. We put up a wall, then the other to hide his place, and the other guy put up a wall, then we put up a wall higher, you know, and it went on for a couple months, and finally Mr. Schafer had a place downtown. He leased the property and gave the guy the place downtown free just to get him out of here.
And I quote my husband, it's a rare person that has financial ability and artistic ability combined. There are a few people, and that makes for a very interesting mix.
But he's the kind of guy, you know, he was sitting here in the office, and he'd walk in, pull up a chair, and throw his feet up on the desk, and just talk to you like you've been your best friend all your life, or your worst enemy sometimes. But, you know, he didn't go up hide any ivory tower. He was down here with us and among us and telling us what we were doing wrong or right.
Mr. Schafer was one of the most unassuming individuals that you would ever meet. He used to get out and ride all over the property. He'd stop and talk to guests. You know, nobody would ever know that he was a multimillionaire, that he'd built this place. And you just stop and ask them how they were doing, you know. Just carry on a general conversation with them.
Well, when I first met him, when he came in here, I didn't realize who he was. He just came on the line. I actually thought he was a customer.
I knew him very well. We went on buying trips together. He and I and his wife, the owner now.
Oh yeah, I met the owner several times. He's a real nice fella. He really enjoyed helping his employees and taking care of South of the Border. This was his project.
I didn't work I didn't work right up under him, because I think after I got this job, the manager's position, he didn't, he won't out and about like he used to. And but I thought he was a good guy, and he did a lot for the local people around here, like the churches, the hospitals, and families that didn't have a whole lot. And he employed a lot of people here. He did.
There's one thing, even when he's being convicted of voting fraud and going to federal prison, he comes off as a good guy. He comes off as the hero. He doesn't look like a criminal.
And I've had a couple come back. I've arrested them. I arrested a shoplifter on 4/16, and she was in jail for, I think, a couple months in Dillon. And I seen her back, and she was walking on 301. 301 is legal for her to walk on 301. If she tried to go into the property or go into any of the shops, then I would rearrest her for trespassing. You have the diner, the truckers, Pot of Gold Arcade, that's not there anymore. Actually, you know what I can do is probably give you that one over there that we have. That way you have like an updated one. Height of that's probably about 100 feet. Just merry-go-round, stuff like that. We have a train ride though that goes around the complex. We have a mini golf course up there. You can ride the train around the majority of the west side of the complex, and then it comes back to the little train station.
The bumper cars is the most active ride. You know, everybody loves to ride the bumper cars. The more family-oriented ride is probably the train. A lot of people love the train. And thrill rider would be the Ferris wheel. You know, the bigger kids, they like to get on the Ferris wheel because it's, like I said, it's not too high. It's 12 seats, 32 foot high. It does go around pretty nice pace. So that's sort of a thrill ride people like. And the bumper cars, everybody likes the bumper cars.
And coming across, we have the Mexico shop and hat shop. Any type of a Mexican hat or Western hat.
My name is Shirley Johnson. I'm from Roland, North Carolina. I'm a manager here at South of the Border. I have 3 gift shops that I manage.
Pedro's Toy and Candy. They also have souvenirs, candy, and they have an elevator ride that's 200 foot straight up into the hat. And then they have like little things where you put the quarter in and you can look out across the whole complex. They used to have the arcade in there, but they actually moved the arcade to a different building where it's a little bit more bigger. We also have a leather shop, all sorts of Western type apparel.
And like the customers that come through. I met one lady here when I first started in December of '83, and I talked to her every night over the phone.
We have our public restrooms there. We have another one. We have a store attached to our gas station. We have our ice cream shop, Pedro's Ice Cream. You can get, I think they have probably about 15 or 20 different flavors of ice cream there.
That's not a secret. Just make it with love.
We have Fort Pedro, Fort Pedro is one of the bigger fireworks stores. You guys can make it look like amateur hour with what they sell over there. The Africa shop, that's another souvenir shop. I haven't really spent a whole lot of time in there to tell you about that one.
They pick up different things. This is a hand instrument. This is a very expensive sculpture. The African lion. He been here for years. He been here for a long time since the African shop started. See, I can take a picture of him. He's old. He been here a long time.
Our employees care about this place. They really do. Now, you're going to have a few, and I'll be indiscriminatory here, younger people who really don't really put as much a heart into the business as someone that's been here 10, 15, 43 years, stuff like that. They are really what's kept the glue in the seams.
Go talk to the manager, Shirley. She's been here since she was a kid. He brought her up from a sales clerk to one of the general managers.
When I first started to work here, I was going to college, and I needed to work too, so I started here as a salesperson in 1965.
I started off as assistant general manager, and then I was promoted. And then I was unpromoted to motel manager for 30 months. I was re-promoted to general manager and have been that way has been that way ever since.
Oh yeah, my family's been out here ever since I was, before I was ever born. I got one uncle. He's been at south of the border 30, 35, 37 years now. So he's been out here a good while. And my daddy worked, and all my uncles worked, and my granddaddy worked out here, my grandma. Basically, my whole family has worked out here in some instance of another, except for my mother. My mother's never worked out here. All right. But everybody else in my family, somewhere or another, has worked out south of the border period. Most of them only come work a couple years and leave. There's only a few unfortunate of us that get stuck out here for years and years. But it's not about being stuck. You just enjoy the job.
Well, I don't know what I'll do if I retire. I've worked 6.5 days a week for almost 28 years now, and I don't know. I'm eligible for early retirement, but I enjoy this work still. I still have passion for this job, and it's hard. And last past Thursday, I took Thursday off. Well, I came out south of the border 3 times Thursday, so I don't know. It's just pretty good health, so. As long as they feel I'm an asset to the company, I'll stay as long as I can.
My job at south of the border, can't really give it a title. I'm public relations. I handle booking parties. I perform marriage ceremonies. For $99, we buy the marriage license, we perform the ceremony, we get our honeymoon suite for the night, a bottle of champagne, and breakfast for 2 the next morning.
Who was the woman who married those people? That was me.
So, sickness as in health, and poverty as in wealth, and to be true to her in all the things of this life till death do you part.
I do. I feel like it's a part of me, and I'm a part of it. And sometimes you love it, and sometimes you hate it for a short period of time,
And sickness as in health, and poverty as in wealth, and to be true to him in all things of this life till death do you part.
I do.
Okay, we're ready for your room.
Oh, I still love it. Yeah, I hope to stay a long, long time.
Okay, one of my greatest experiences was in 1973. I got stranded here in a snow blizzard. I had to stay here for 3 days before I could get home.
He came in and she put him on top of the counter, and he had on a blue jean jumpsuit and a long orange sleeve shirt, and he was like, she told him to tell me hi, and he was like, hi, Sharon. That was about it. I ain't never seen a monkey talk, so when he said my name, I kind of liked it.
Well, everyone else was stranded here too, the tourists, because they couldn't get on the road, they would get stuck. And we operated right on. We kept one gift shop open and a restaurant.
I don't know their names, but they was from Canada, and I thought they was different because the lady, she couldn't speak English, but the husband could, and he was just saying bad words. And I come out the office and I popped him on his hand. I told him to say that. And so, and I get to see them twice a year.
I was here one day and we got signs up around the lakes and water there. Don't play around the water. And the little kid come up with his mama. It was in the winter time. The first thing he did was run to the water and dived in, and I said, oh Lord, I'm freaking to get wet, because I figured I'd have to go get him, but she jumped in and got him out. That's about the funniest thing I ever seen.
This was in 1982 or 83. We had another snowstorm. Seems like snowstorms are the best time. And I was coming to work that morning, and the gift shop across the highway, Mexico East, as soon as I walked in and said good morning, the roof collapsed. That was an experience.
It was going to snow that night, and everybody was afraid for the little baby elephant freezing to death, and the whole complex trying to get the elephant in the pen. And finally, a guy just walked up there and whacked him across the trunk, and he ran into his pen. And I found a guy who really helped build this company. He's deceased now. He said, Hannibal crossed the Alps with elephants, so we were worried about this damn elephant freezing to death, That story always stuck with me.
Yeah, we had some famous people to stop through, like Sandra Bullock made a movie here a few years back, and Mary J. Blige. A lot of famous people stop through here sometimes.
Well, the only famous person I met, I guess you would say famous, was Sugar Ray Leonard. I got to wait on him. I was working in the t-shirt shop. He was my customer. And the most,
Yeah, there's been they filmed the movie Forces of Nature out here, and they rode some of the rides. So we met Sandra Bullock and Ben Affleck was in it then.
Well, I did meet George Jones. His bus used to stop here often.
I don't know if you're aware of this, but Ben Bernanke, who's the chairman of the Federal Reserve, he worked here as a teenager. He's a Dillon County resident, and he worked here as a teenager going to college.
I'm from Dillon. I'm Dillon right here. This part of the town is called Hamer, but actually about 4 miles up the road is a little town called Dillon. That's where I'm from.
but mostly everybody's like close by, either South Carolina or North Carolina. So like maybe Roland, Fairmount, someplace like that. And Dillon and Ladder and Lakeview,
And where are you from?
Dillon.
I think for a long time, south of the border was the economy of Dillon. It's hard to find someone from that area who did not work at south of the border, even for a brief time in the summer.
I know when I came up through school, Alan Schafer, they gave me a job.
But Schafer, he put money in the pockets of all sorts of people in Dillon, from all different angles. And then he took the money back from them by offering lots of things for them to buy.
I was as happy over that $60 to $70 a week as you would have been over $500 today.
Half the businesses in Dillon at one point were owned by Alan Schafer and various members of his family.
He put us to work, but we needed to work. So, when you have success, people are jealous. And that's the problem you run into in small towns. When you're sitting on top of the hill, people are jealous of that.
I'm sure you probably have a mixed bag of opinions, but I think most people in Dillon County and Robeson County are thankful to have south of the border here because we have provided so many jobs over the years.
And as much money as Mr. Schafer had when that kind of goes hand in hand with having political power. But he didn't abuse his political power to hurt Dillon, as far as, as you mentioned, they talked about him moving 95. Well, if he had that done, then it helped himself, but look what else has helped Dillon.
Everyone I've ever talked to in South Carolina when I started this project clearly and deeply believes that I-95 goes straight through south of the border because Alan Schafer used his political clout to get the interstate to go straight through.
I-95 was originally scheduled to go 30 miles away from here, but it came through here, thank goodness. So.
Makes that little divot over here.
Pardon?
Said it makes that little
yeah.
south of the border swing over here.
It helped a great deal, we'll say.
It's the best mystery of south of the border. There are a lot of rumors that Schafer killed people, that he bought people out, that he bought out the whole, the whole interstate system. He was on the board of South Carolina Highways Commission. He was a commissioner, and a lot of the people who served as commissioners were his close associates.
We had the highest electric bill in the state, and also the heavy tax that they got from here was probably one of the biggest anywhere. So it was for the good of the state of South Carolina to have the exit.
It's not impossible that he did do some finagling to get it to go right by his business, but there's no proof just yet.
And we probably wouldn't have been here today if it had not, came in this direction, well, practically through our front yard here.
He was a more of a behind-the-scenes player in politics, particularly when it came to funding Democratic politics in South Carolina. He poured a lot of money into the Democratic Party. But by the time in 79 and 80, by the time he's involved in the election, or he irregularities, the South Carolina Democratic Party is having its meetings, nominating committee meetings and things at south of the border.
Well, he enjoyed politics really, really a lot, and that's really, honestly, about all I can say.
Oh, he talked to everybody about politics, but again, he just grew up with that. I mean, that was part of his makeup.
One of Schafer's major allies in politics was Bubba Ness, who was head of the Supreme Court of South Carolina. He started out as an employee of Schafer's father unloading beer.
My father, years ago, while he was a small-town businessman, was heavy into the Democratic Party, always.
Actually, his brother, in an oral history interview that was done, had a really great story about how it was almost like a family tradition he was carrying on, where he had fond childhood memories of Election Day in Dillon County, where they would drive up to a poll and there'd be a guy standing outside the poll, and you'd go over and be like, I'll give you a beer if you'll vote for this guy. And it just seemed like all along it was not, I didn't do this, that's not something I would do, it's just that, oh, I got caught. It has been said that he took a fall for other individuals, but he was depicted as being behind a political machine. He was the mastermind behind this election fraud. The whole thing that made the 80 election possible to do the fraud was that in 78 they reversed an order that said that all absentee ballots had to be witnessed by a notary. So because that was no longer an issue, Schafer actually said at the Democratic Convention, somewhat incriminatingly, that to a crooked politician, the new measures not requiring that were like an invitation to steal an election. He was convicted on counts of voter fraud involving absentee ballots, which would be paying people for their absentee ballots and then mailing them in with the candidate of his choice selected, which made it a federal offense. And I think his quote from the end of the Alan Schafer story really sums up his defense. He says, I tried to do too much, I trusted too many people, believed too many rumors, spent too much money without checking where it was going and for what purpose. Above all, Schafer promised, it will never happen again, although I will always, as long as God gives me strength, fight for the poor, the underprivileged, and against concentrations of power in any one man. So he never says, I didn't do it. He just says, I did it for good reasons, which again, later in the 90s when he's supporting video poker and heavily funding politicians, kind of comes back to button him in the butt. Newspaper accounts of the 1980s and 1990s, Schafer often appears as behind-the-scenes political figure, the shadowy boss of a democratic political machine. Nowhere was this persona as clear as in newspaper accounts of the battle over video gaming in South Carolina.
How important were the video poker out here when they were around?
Extremely important. I can't emphasize to you how important they were.
Talking about the taboo trades, fireworks remained to be a huge market for Schafer. Then in the mid-90s, he got into video poker. Video poker was legalized in South Carolina, though gambling remained illegal.
And it was a couple years before they started talking about regulations on these machines.
And very quickly, he poured a lot of money into it. In 1996, he opened the Silver Slipper, which if you go today, you can still see the big silver slipper, though the Silver Slipper is no more.
Nothing in there. And we have two other, we have another casino down the road, another one on the left. There's nothing in there either.
But actually that building was a casino. That was called the Golden Eagle. That was the Golden Eagle, and the one right beside it was called the Diamond Horseshoe. That was a casino too. They had 175 machines right there between them two buildings. And then right down here, they had the Silver Slipper and Pedro's Hideaway. We had 190 machines in between them two. So altogether with South Dakota, they had about 400 poker machines.
And I think the government thought they were getting not their fair share of the revenue, we'll say.
By 1998, it had become a major issue. A lot of people on all sides of South Carolina, all the border areas inside the state, were making really big fortunes off of video poker, but many people in the state were still opposed to video poker, which was viewed as gambling and therefore very unpopular.
And that's when the drive started then to remove the poker machines. And it's pretty vicious attacks too. You know, like a small child sitting in a poker room, sitting on the floor crying beside her father or mother, you know. It's a pretty tough attack.
There was a court decision that said no more poker, which Schafer then took to the next level of court. He appealed it and won, but he had a hard time after that starting his business back up. And by the time he got his business running again, he hired back some of the people, but not all of the people he'd employed before. There was a call for the referendum vote.
And the people of South Carolina decided that we didn't need them, which was a huge loss of revenue. So we had to go, you know, to other things. We had to do things we were doing out here better. And so we could try to make up for some of the cash flow we were not receiving.
Every machine we own cost us $7,500 a year just to let it sit inside of our building. So look at the money we was giving the state. They said they didn't want it.
I really think with the video poker, even if Schafer had survived past 2001, I think that the video poker was like a major kick in the teeth to south of the border. He'd invested so much of his profits from the previous couple of years into the video poker and into promoting it and into trying to keep it legal.
And it was like a broken kneecap when we lost him. And also, approximately 200 people lost their jobs out here too.
The real loss, he argued, was for Dillon County's schools. Not only would the schools have benefited from the taxes on video gambling, but also Schafer revealed his will left much of his fortune to the local schools. Diagnosed with cancer, Schafer confided that the Dillon County schools will probably own south of the border one day.
I think our greatest expansion was in the 80s, and our best business years were in the 80s and early 90s. Business has declined a little because we like to blame it on everything.
I don't know if the novelty of South of the Border will ever wear off. I just don't know if they can continue to maintain it at the level it used to be. I mean, Alan Schafer would pour millions of dollars into it every year, and I'm not sure if that's still happening.
But people seem to be riding still. They'll buy gasoline, but they're cutting back in other ways, you know, where the guy would come in here, spend the night, eat dinner. They'll come in here now and buy gas, and you see tailgaters eating lunch on the back of a pickup truck or SUV type vehicle. I think people are having to budget their money more, much more than what they did at one time.
People in the past were actually stopping as, it was in some ways in the 60s, it was a resort. It was a destination on the way to another destination because it was nice. It appealed to sort of luxuriousness, which I think people today are not stopping there because they view south of the border as luxurious.
So we're going to have to get the I-95 traffic back, more of it. And that's the way I see for us to survive. I mean, we're not broke, don't misunderstand me, but you will be if you don't have customers.
You can talk to people from all over the world and just mention south of the border, and if they've seen it, they get a goofy smile. But the important thing is whether they've been there, or they've driven past, or they've seen the billboards. And I think increasingly those things are kind of fading. You cannot believe how many ways it's shaped how South Carolinians are able to buy alcohol on Sunday, to buy fireworks. Just the implications are enormous for a place that is all about having fun. Fuzzy. It kind of captures the whole state's general quirkiness. It's really a state where the people who are a little bit off are usually the ones who make a difference.
He was a rare individual. I had a husband who said it took a genius to be able to balance financial and human interest and creativity.
Schafer, aged 87, died on July 19, 2001. His entire estate was valued at more than $50 million and included everything from south of the border and the Schafer Distributing Company to car dealerships, the spicy South Carolina beverage Blend Ginger Ale, the Ace High Advertising Company, and hundreds of billboards.
His wife tells the story that a local gentleman, older gentleman, who had worked here, they all felt like part of it, said, Mr. Allen, his death was on CNN, and said, that must mean he was very important. He said, you never hear anybody here on CNN.
Schafer's death just kind of put the business into shock. That's the way I kind of viewed it when I started my research.
Well, of course, life goes on, and he was a spark, and it's like any other famous person. It's never, things keep changing in life anyway, but he would have changed with the times. We talk about how he would have handled some of the stuff that's going on.
I just don't think that it's not being sort of reinvented constantly, which is I think what Schafer really did, was he reinvented it.
He was here 7 days a week. And you had to stay late at night to let him go home before you did. So
he was a very private person. He was funny when he wanted to be. He was very, very charitable, but nobody knew it. He had many foundations.
He gave a lot of money to needy causes. A lot of people didn't ask for it. A lot of people did.
He done a lot for the churches in Dillon. He donated a lot of money to a lot of the churches that now he helped a lot of the libraries for our public schools. And you just don't get a man that's his caliber. You don't get them every day, you know.
He was just larger than life. I've never seen video footage or a photograph of him that just wasn't put together, so it was perfect. I mean, it just promoted this image of what you think of as Alan Schafer.
Other than just knowing he was a genius, or smart, and by the things he did, I really can't tell you that much. But he certainly was a genius out here, and what he did.
It was just that he loved this place and he had other businesses, but he ultimately made this his baby, and he lived and dreamed it and created it. It was a creation.
They would ask, you know, where's the Mexican that owns this joint, something like that, and we had to invent one. So I came out here and talked to a black lady who's still living, by the way. She's 93 or 4 years old. She's one of my, I don't know what you call her, but I take care of her just like she's a relative. But I gave her $500 for 3 acres of land, which is more than it was worth, and put up a beer depot. That was the original south of the border, that one building. The total original investment here was less than $5,000. And we opened it January 13, 1950. I can't sleep at night. I keep a legal pad and 3 or 4 felt pens right side of my bed at night. And very often I wake up 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning and I have got an idea in my head of, boy, this will make a great billboard. And I bring them in and drop them on that table over there. And in the cold light of day, about 20 out of 21 are ridiculous. But every now and then something comes up. No, I mean, I've tried to rationalize it, and if I were coming down this highway, the only reason I would stop here, I mean, if I had nothing to do with it and never seen it before, the only reason I'd stop, I'd want to meet the ad agency that did their advertising. I wouldn't be interested in the place or anything else.